Hi, welcome to the Mom Files, Moments of Motherhood podcast, a place where the hard things have room to exist without shame.
If you're a mom, you'll get realistic routines, gentle validation, and encouragement to try new things. We're here to be your village, a judgment-free zone for modern motherhood. Take what fits for you and leave the rest.
We're happy you're here. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Mom Files. I'm Hav.
And I'm Aleea.
And today we're going to dive into Matrescence, as long as I'm saying that correctly. Matrescence, to put it simply, is the functional and cognitive change that takes place during pregnancy. So the changes that continue to take place and adapt as the child grows and changes. So it's not just during pregnancy, but pretty much for the rest of your life after pregnancy. These changes encompass physical, hormonal, psychological, social, even spiritual changes that fundamentally transform a woman's identity. So we want to talk a bit about that and the core part of Matrescence that involves a profound shift in women's sense of self and identity as she integrates the experience of being a mother into her existing self and kind of how that affects mothers. We, of course, will talk about how it affected us and give a little bit more into what we know about it. But just to start off, I know that we've discussed in past episodes our shift into motherhood and how it was a huge change for Aleea and especially for me, not only really creating a different life, but a deep shift in who I am personally and what is important to me now and how that changed versus what was important to me beforehand. Of course, having kids will change that, but it's more integral than that. It's kind of like this feeling that it's impossible not to let it shift. So yeah, we'll talk more about how, for me, becoming more confident, less willing to back down, really on anything that involves my children. So that's big scope on how I felt.
Yeah. And, one thing I'd like to add that I think is really interesting is that this isn't talked about that much. I know it's starting to be more, obviously, we just learned about it. But despite the fact that it is universal, it seems that because all these women go through it, and it's just interesting to me, it just shows that there is a huge gap in women's healthcare, especially versus men's, whether that's mental health, testing, research, like for cancer. I know that women just don't get, they don't get the same medical attention. And so I think it is important that we keep pushing for more focus on this, just because the more we can give a name to it, it allows for it to be real and for other women to feel seen and heard too. I know, and maybe we'll talk about this in another episode later on, but it can happen with that HG, the throwing up, women that have really severe throwing up. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I don't want to say it, but they call it HG. So we want to help reduce shame around it. So I do think I wanted to add that because I do think it's interesting that there are so many struggles around motherhood, and so it's just crazy that it feels like it's something everyone experiences, but it seems so new, especially in 2025. So with that said, Hav, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the science behind.
Let's talk about the science. So, just from what you said, Aleea, I think it's talked about in the point of your body's about to change, right? Everybody's like, your life is about to change, right? But why?
Right.
So yeah, like Aleea said, we did dive in a little bit and do some research. And I do suggest that you all do the research as well, because we're really just going to hit the very, very high level parts of what changes in your body. But yeah, so we want to understand it better and figure you might as well. So, really from what we found, the overarching changes, like we said, it's everything from brain to hormones to physicality and whatnot. But for example, we learned that your brain grows 4 times the size that it was, and it learns your amygdala grows 4 times the size to help you learn all the new things in growing a child. But it also trims a lot of unimportant or non-crucial information, which creates what we know as mom brain or the mom fog. So if you feel like you're going crazy because before you were pregnant, you could remember, I don't know, every star on the star chart. I don't know. But now you're like, oh, what's a Sagittarius? There you go. Now you know it's unimportant. So your brain is cutting it out. But there's also shifts in hormones. So your oxytocin increases And there's also a condition, it's called DMER, DMER, which basically it comes a lot more, it sounds like, after you have the baby, especially if you're nursing, but it's the dip in your dopamine that is caused by nursing and the spike in oxytocin, which for a lot of nursing moms, if you ever feel maybe a little more depressed or have negative emotions, that's where that comes from. Also, the physicality, your whole body structure changes, essentially. Your lungs and your rib cage. So your rib cage expands 2 to 3 times so that your lungs can take in more oxygen. And then I'm sure most people are informed about this, but of course your organs shift. So your pelvic floor changes, your organs move around. There's a lot that goes into the physical aspects. And we'll talk more on this, but really quickly, there's also the emotional part of Matrescence, like baby blues or PMAD, which affects about probably up to, if not more, 80% of mothers. So this is kind of what we're feeling of the emotional roller coaster, loving your baby, but crying at certain moments, not really knowing what's being affected or why you're feeling certain things. And then there's also the guilt and pressure because maybe your emotions aren't matching how you feel that you should as being a mom. You know, like we said, maybe you cry because you're depressed, but you don't understand why you're depressed because you have a beautiful new baby in front of you. So we can go further into that and we'll focus mostly on kind of what me and Aleea experienced and what we've seen from the women's perspective of Matrescence.
Yeah, it's funny because as you were like talking about those things, I was thinking about how I definitely experienced a lot of those. But I feel like I didn't realize I was experiencing a lot of those, especially like in the early days of newborn phase. I do remember, well, definitely the crying, but even the anger and stuff. And I know we've talked about that before, but it was like, I just felt it was because of other, like you aren't linking it to it being like something that's happening with you and you. I was just like, oh, it's because people aren't doing what I need.
Right.
Or, like it's almost like the invisible labor. Like I felt like I was blaming it on other things versus being like, hey, maybe this is like something I'm experiencing internally. Like, why am I so... And I wouldn't say I was like rage, but I definitely felt an increase. It was just easier for me to get angry. Like I was agitated easier, things like that. Definitely it was easier. I mean, it's still easier for me to cry. I'm like, I cry all the time now over like dumb stuff. Your weddings. I'm like, I will cry through an entire wedding just because it's so, and so it is interesting. I think, yeah, it was just interesting as you were, talking about it, like how I was feeling. I don't know. Did you, I'm sure you felt the same.
Yeah. I mean, well, and I know I like during the research and during reading it, a lot of it really called out to me. I mean, I think because I'm 4 years, well, almost 4 years postpartum. So there's a lot of things that I recognize now that I'm like, oh, like I wasn't actually a horrible person. Like that really was the hormones. Yes, I was told that it was going to be the hormones. But when you're in it, it's really hard to like separate those things. So like you said, like the anger and like, for lack of better words, aggression that I felt, I thought, like, oh, maybe I'm just a bad mom. Like I can't handle certain things or I can't handle my partner, like little things that like you don't realize. A lot of small things that my partner or even like Azzy being really difficult to put down to sleep would make me angry. Whereas like I feel like now where I am with my hormones actually more in place and I like am more aware of my body and what was going on, I would in this moment be able to step back and be like, she's just crying. Or like, we just need to adjust the sleep schedule or he's my husband, he needs attention. And we'll talk more about how this affects relationships. But I think that was one of the hardest things for me being like, where is this disconnect? Because I love my husband and I love my child, but like everything is making me sad or I won't even say just angry. There was things that I was like, this logically makes sense to me, but I'm going to go cry about it. Like I feel like the world is ending. For what?
Yeah. And I do think, especially in the early stages, the sleep deprivation plays a role in that, like and then you add on the fact that you do have haywire, like hormones.
Not to mention we both nursed. So with the
Right.
DMER, where like the letdown is creating an imbalance in your oxytocin or your dopamine, and I know your baby does it too. We were the pacifiers. So they're constantly just messing with our emotions.
Yeah.
But we were never
Oh.
explained to why it would feel that way.
Hmm. Yeah. And then it's so true. Like you just feel guilty and bad. Like you feel
Mhm.
bad for feeling that way. But then it's like because even like you said, as you were reading or like talking about it, I instantly was like, oh, I almost feel better. Like being like, oh, there was an explanation for why I felt the way that I did.
Right. I mean, I'll even say like the brain fog. I felt so dumb. I felt like with my boss, like we would have conversations and my brain would just go blank on words, like similar conversations that we had a million times before, where I'm explaining a situation with a manager or like something, and my brain just went blank. And I remember being like, I'm going to lose my job. Like, I can't even think of basic words right now. How am I supposed to keep up with having an infant and work full time when my brain literally stutters like constantly?
And I do think adding a career, like going back to work and stuff does add because you already have this mental load that's just
Hmm.
exploded overnight when you get a baby.
Right.
For me, it was like, it was crazy. I was like, I never realized how much, and I've said it before, how much time and stuff I had before a kid. But I'm like, it's just crazy how it wasn't even once he arrived, it felt like my time went away. It was just like, wow, there's so much stuff I feel like I need to do, especially when you're wanting to hit certain milestones or blah, blah, making sure they're really smart or doing all this. It's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is a ton of information. And then you add on work and then you add on making sure your partner's happy, and like all of this. And it's just, there's so much that comes with it. And I agree. I think when you add in a career, or even if you aren't a working mom, that's okay too. But I'm like, it's just crazy the mental load that just adds a whole nother layer of pressure.
Well, we really can only speak from the work from home
Right.
mom situation because that's the only thing that we've known. And I will say my capabilities at work, mind you, I think like I can still do a lot of work, but the ability and like the capacity I had for multitasking at work before having Azzy, and of course a lot of that now is because I'm constantly multitasking with like a toddler running around. Well, I won't say constantly, but you get my point. Adding in that like additional thing that my brain had to constantly be thinking about while working, like my capacity load has decreased for work. Granted, it's still pretty high, but it's a weird thing to take in all these different things. And there's literally no normalcy anymore because the things I could do at work, I can't do anymore. I was not a very emotional person before Azzy. Now I'm emotional about everything. The logic out the window. Like all these things that I am so used to being able to count on myself for is now I can't count on myself. I remember being like, am I going to have to quit work and be a stay-at-home mom? Which we've spoken about in past episodes. And I probably would have been just fine and been really happy, but my career has been very important to me and that was scary to me. But we're here. We survived. But yeah.
No, it is true. And I think even, the capacity definitely went down. And even for me, it was also the motivate. Like I used to be so like, I would want to wake up and like get all this stuff done and now my motivation and push for work, it just changed. And it's finally starting to come back. And I do think that comes when you finally start feeling more restful and like getting more into routine. And
Yeah.
I do think the early phases, like it is easy. Like I've said before, it's easy to get caught up in just wanting to be a mom. But yeah, it is so like for me, I was like, wow, I used to be so work oriented and now it's kind of the opposite. Like I have to find little snippets to work versus
Mhm.
before it was like, let me find little snippets to not work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is really interesting. And I think, and everyone's different for me because of Golden Goose. I did take less of a paternal leave and I do think that might have affected it too. Like I felt like I was just stressed through the early stages but that was my choice. So again, not everyone does that. And I'm like, I should have made a different choice However, I do think that played a role in just being, or I don't know, I said parental, whatever. You know what I mean? It played a role.
No, I think that's a really good point, and we can go in on how that is a social expectation. Because I mean, I think you took less time than I did, but I had 4 months and then I went part-time for 2 months. And I mean, okay, pause. They say I think it takes about 4 years for your body, for your hormones in your body to actually get back to like a standard after you have your baby. And I remember those going back to work in those first 2 months and even the first like year and thinking the same thing, being like, my priorities for work. I don't care about projects. I don't care about getting recognition. But I think that speaks to like the social thing. Like society should allow us to take more time off because our bodies were built to have that that's a maternal instinct. We are supposed to be locked in on baby. So naturally, of course, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And of course, all I wanted to do was be with my baby. I'm finding more joy in work again and like being able to be like, okay, like I'm doing these cool things with work. Now that my body's a little bit more like, okay, she's not a baby anymore. She can go out into the world and like do things. But again, that's like the way our bodies were created to work. Clearly, our brains are shifting, growing 4 times and cutting pieces off and changing your hormones that you literally go crazy for your baby.
Yeah, you have an identity shift. Like it is. It's just when it comes down to it, it's a full-blown identity shift. And it's funny because there's a lot of, it's what we always say. Everything that I've done as a mother is the exact opposite of how I would mother.
Right.
It's just like, because I never expected the hormonal shifts. I didn't take into account any of this. I only took into account adding a person to my life versus all the things that come with when you do add this person to your life.
Yeah.
Especially when you give birth and stuff like that. Like it's just, everything who I was before changed.
It's not just affecting your actions, but it's literally affecting you, like your body.
Yes. Yeah, like my body just is different. And it was weird because I just didn't think that was not a change I anticipated. Like I anticipated, and I think that's why when you hear people being like, oh, it's going to be a big change. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's a big change adding, maybe a couple new routines, things like that. Not a huge change. I wasn't thinking like friendships, priorities,
right?
Just how I view things, like my values, like all of that changed too. And that is something I wasn't expecting.
No, but that's a really good shift into like, because I mean, we talked about the work relationship part of it, right? But I know for me, there was a big shift in my relationship with everyone around me, but clearly with Tony, with my partner, and how I think, like I said, like little things affected me differently. It was harder for me to see the things that he was doing. And like, honestly, it was harder for me to be grateful for the things that he was doing, even though looking back on it, I'm like, how was I not grateful? He was doing all these things, but it wasn't what I felt like I needed in the moment because my whole world was baby. So his whole world should be baby. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how or at least how felt my brain worked. So I think we could definitely dive into like, and I honestly, like you're honestly still in it. I mean, not that I'm not in it, but
you're a few years ahead, right? You've had a little more time. No, I definitely still feel in it. But even after a year, I already feel like the fog is starting to lift. I feel more but I agree with you. And I think you made a good point when it comes to Tony. It's like with Ty, like there is an imbalance. Like you feel like there's all this, and we've talked about it in a couple episodes ago with all the invisible labor. Like you feel like all this stuff isn't being met. But it's just you just aren't viewing things the same way that they're viewing things. And it's hard to grapple that when you're going through it.
And I will say those feelings are valid. I'm not saying that like us as moms or like I was wrong for feeling that, but looking back on it, it's easier to be like, okay, this is why you were feeling that way. When he came to love on you and touch you, it wasn't that you didn't want to be touched by him. You just were touched out and you needed some space. And I think we both recognize that now. But I think in a past episode, I literally said, he told me he did not think that I liked him. There was a time when as he was a newborn and an infant, where he just kind of gave me space, because even things that, like, I'm not saying I was snapping at him for everything, but he could tell that I just, like, was not, like, you want to give me a hug and I just want you to take the baby and give me a second. But I don't want you to take the baby because the baby needs to be here with me, and then you feel like you're going crazy. And then your relationship is affected, because if your husband can't, like, recognize that as well, then, or even if they can recognize that, imagine how they're feeling, because they're feeling rejected and like they can't do more. It's a whole.
And I think for us too, because this isn't going to apply to everyone because they weren't co-sleeping,
Right.
but co-sleeping also adds a whole nother layer, because it's not only are you, especially if you're like Hav and I who did exclusively breastfeed, you're touched out all day and then you're touched out all night. And it's really hard to find time to be like, let's be together, let's love on each other. Because it's like, once you do get that time, it's like, you know what, I really don't want anyone touching me or looking at me. And I do think too, with that, I will say for me, my body image has also played a role, where I'm like, don't look at me, don't touch me. Like, just you are over there, like, keep the lights off, like, everybody just, yeah.
Well, and like if you tore, if you got stitches, like, there's so
Right.
much that leads into that. But I know, especially for me, like, I know Tony's love language is touch. And I know how hard that was for him, because the last thing that I wanted was extra touch.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't. I don't, even if it's like a nice, like, hi, pat on the back, it's like, honestly, I really don't want that. Like, and I get it. I feel bad when it's
Literally, just
not, I want to be left alone.
like, we have to laugh about it because it's honestly kind of sad, to be fair. Like, I want that touch.
Yeah. And you feel bad because you feel like a bad wife. You feel like you're worried, like, is this going to lead to a
I'm literally
marital?
having flashbacks, I think, of sending you voice memos and being like, I feel like I don't know how to be a wife and a mom right now. I really don't. And I am thankful that Tony and I had such a strong relationship before, because it, like, even being so close and loving each other so much, that first year was so hard. It's not like we fought or, like, hated each other, but it was just like the
There's a
affection
disconnect.
is not being given the way that it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that disconnect, and then it adds to other things that I feel like it's just like anything. It's this feeling and this change is just a domino effect, especially as you get deeper. And I think that's why I'm glad you brought up that it can take up to 4 years plus, because like I said, I'm only a year in. I still feel this way. I
Mhm.
still have moments where I feel like I'm struggling to be, a good wife, a good parent, a good friend, because there's just areas that shift, or I just I don't have the energy or the capacity to give to it like I used to.
I mean, the friend thing, I know for me, I felt like a horrible friend, especially because like, when I was talking to my friends, I just wanted to get shit off my back. Like, I'm sorry, I just keep talking about the baby, but this is literally my whole life, and I just I just want to cry a little bit, and I just want to scream a little bit, and you're my person, so, like, please, but also please don't hate me, because I know that I don't have the capacity to be like, okay, my turn to listen. You know? Like, I try really hard, and I know we're honestly probably both better at it than we thought or are thinking, but it's hard to know the kind of person that you should be, and
Or want to be, and you're just not hitting that mark. Yeah.
you're not. And I won't even, 4 years in, still not perfect. I still get touched out, and but I'm more able to be like, yo, Tony, I just need a sec. It's not you. I'm touched out. And he's more able to be like, oh, you're overstimulated. Can I give you a hug?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, whether you're a work from home mom or a stay at home mom, if you're at home a lot, you're also alone a lot. And it's hard because then you are bottling up these feelings. You don't really have anywhere to go with them. And so it's like Hav said, sometimes then you're like spewing on your, couple friends or whatnot. But I'm like, that might be the only time in a week that you've been able to have any sort of feeling or sharing of that feeling. Like,
I mean, that
yeah,
could be for moms who go to work too, because I'm sure a lot of moms don't want to vent to their coworker. You know what I'm saying? So it goes a lot, but especially for like, I know you're pretty isolated and I'm pretty isolated. So I know a lot of my big emotions with Tony were like, oh, he's going out to be with the guys and he deserves to go out and be with the guys. But you're the only adult that I have to talk to that like in person in real life. And so I don't want to be mad that you're leaving me, but I'm pissed that you're leaving and but at the same time, yes, please go have fun with your friends. But like you.
100%. And I think we talked about this with invisible labor. It's especially like when Ty would get home, you want to just like spew and like hand over the baby and stuff. But then you're also reminded like they also have had a long day and they're still but you're kind of like jealous because you're like, excuse me. But then I'm like, I understand because I have done that type of job where I've gone out and worked for, 12 hours and you do just want to come home and be like, leave me alone. So
it's really easy to let resentment build for that, especially when you're not able to like logically step out. Now I'm like, would have I wanted to be the one leaving the house? Probably not. But in that moment, you're thinking grass is always greener. I'm stuck here with the baby and you get to leave the house. And I know we talk about with invisible labor, but with Matrescence too, there's that feeling of the mental, or like the load, the mental load, the physical load that literally happens overnight. And whether Tony was there to help me or not, it felt like it was all my job because your brain is literally telling you this is your job. So
it's easy to kind of get caught up in your own feelings.
Yeah. And then feeling like shit for resenting somebody that you shouldn't be resenting because you don't actually resent them, but it feels like you do. But in reality, you have no idea what you're feeling.
Yes. 100%. Do you have a podcast and a pile of laundry staring you down? Are you questioning your life choices during nap time or working at midnight with one eye open and 3 tabs running?
Yeah, same. We've lived that chaos. Hey, still live in it. That's why we offer podcast editing and post-production services for the moms who have things to say, but zero time to do all the things. Let us help you get your voice out there without losing your mind, your message, or your weekend.
Think less burnout, more snuggles. Less tech stress, more talking to your audience in peace. Interested? Tap the link in the description to learn more. Plus, we offer free discovery calls, no pressure, just real talk to see if we vibe.
Let's make podcasting easier because you're already doing enough.
And I think that kind of leads us into, like we said, there's a ton. This is just like a very skim level of the top of your feelings because you honestly, this Matrescence, it affects every aspect of your life, whether it's your career, your identity, your family, whatever it is. But I think, how can we navigate this? Navigate the before the baby version, who you are now, and how, maybe that transition isn't just instant. And I know we have talked about this a couple episodes ago, so definitely listen to the Who I Am Now, Rediscovering Yourself After Kids, because I do think we touch on this point quite a bit. But to kind of just add on to it, I do think this is a really good time to revisit and redefine who you are and how you feel about things. Because like we have been talking about, what mattered to you before most likely has shifted. It may have become clearer, or maybe you're really confused on where you're at. And so this is a great time to redefine your values, who you are, your new self. And you might not quite know yet, but it's just time to start thinking about it. Like maybe, and you don't have to choose one thing or another. There could definitely be an overlap of who you were before into now. But I just think it's a great time to find small ways to, even if it's 5 minutes, to find ways to reconnect or figure out like, hey, that actually isn't something I'm interested in anymore. This fits me better now.
No, I think those are all good points in like finding, but I do want to kind of draw back for a second and point out like that newborn stage. And when you're first like really deep in it, I honestly just want to say sit in it. Just let yourself feel the things. Try your best, of course, especially like your spouse and work and friendships and stuff, to like realize what is being affected by the actual relationship versus what's being affected by like your hormones and your physicality that's changing and whatnot. But yeah, sit in it for a second and let grieve maybe, I know for me, when I was trying to decide if I was going to quit work and do that stuff, like really think about how it is making you feel and try not to dwell on how it would have made you feel before. And then as you get used to being a new mom and you get used to the changes, because things change even with baby, but with yourself, I feel like every like 4 or so months as the baby changes, you change. So yeah, kind of just sit in it and and be okay with the different emotions and try to talk them out, especially if you are with a partner or you're getting help with friends and whatnot. And then yeah, sit down and kind of try to navigate what you are feeling now and where you can make it meet what you wanted beforehand or what you see for your future.
I think that's a good point. Yeah. When I say like sit down, I don't mean right. I mean, especially if you are really early in the newborn phase, you probably haven't even realized that this is something you're going. Like I definitely didn't. But it is a good time, if you can find snippets for little moments, like even if that means taking a little longer shower just so that you can feel, just whatever the feelings are feeling 100%. So I think you make an excellent point. Yes, this is something like it will change and whatnot, but it's good to have an idea that, hey, maybe you aren't the problem. It's just something that you're experiencing and you just haven't quite grappled. Like it's normal to feel everything at once and you should feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. And being okay with your relationship changing. It doesn't mean that it's going to change in a way that means that you're not going to have the relationship anymore, but recognizing maybe you take notes of like how certain things are making you feel. We talk about this all the time. Take a little note, write down little jots. What made you angry today? What made you happy today? What made you sad? Like little things. It's like when you go to your doctor, right? And they're like, "Oh, how long have these headaches been happening? What caused them to happen?" And they're like, "Okay, now I want you every time you get a headache, write down what you drank that day, what you ate that day." Not that specific, but like, okay, I was nursing the baby and you came up and whatever. And then talk to your spouse about that and say, "Hey, this is how I'm being affected right now. How can we work so that like we can still have that relationship and physical touch and things, but in a time that I'm maybe not going to snap quite as quickly." Things like that.
And 100%, your relationship will change, but I think that's a great point. Communicate, no matter what stage of parenthood, or even if you don't have kids yet, communication is so big because it will help you both feel heard or allowing you to be heard if because sometimes we forget, sometimes our partner, like my partner, Ty, he's not a huge communicator. So sometimes I forget that I have to ask and, pry a little more. And sometimes we forget that's how, they also have feelings and are going through stuff. So it's just a good way to open up the conversation together.
Yeah, that's a good note too, in that your communication will change or maybe should. It depends. I don't know your communication style, but I know for me and Tony, when we get upset about things, we separate ourselves so that we can really think through what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, how to communicate it without hurting each other. We both can have very set thoughts. So that's how before Azzy, that's really how, honestly, we didn't argue. That's how we figured out a lot of things. A lot of the times we were able to step outside of ourselves and be like, okay, like it was me, whatever. But after Azzy, there's that stepping away and not talking about it just then resulted in us not talking about anything. And then like a year and a half in being, having that, I won't even say argument, but that conversation where we realize we're both having the same feelings and we haven't communicated about it. And now he feels like a bad dad, or that I don't want him to be a dad. And then I feel like a bad wife, and that I'm the reason that he's not, like there's like these integral parts where the communication that we had before, it worked great before. It didn't work now. So now we have to be a little bit more like, okay, I saw how you did that. Let's talk about it because I disagree. Or, sorry, I snapped at you for the 50th time today. I'm really touched out. I probably should have told you that before you got home. Sorry.
And even, if you're going through this, I even think explaining Matrescence to them. Because, if it's new to us, it's going to be new to them. And they might not be realizing that you are experiencing these specific hormone changes and these changes. So it could be a good time to talk about it. And then it allows them to be like, yeah, I noticed, maybe we can figure something out that works for both of us. Because, I mean, it is real and we should be allowed to feel these feelings, you know? It's like what Hav said. It's okay to normalize who you're becoming and it's still unfolding and it's okay. Like, you don't have to, just because you're feeling this doesn't mean you have to like push it under. Like, you're allowed to feel it and you're allowed to go through all these like feelings. It's normal. And I do think that actually leads to that with the communication. I also think something that, you know, we as moms can do is also support each other through this by continuing to talk to each other, normalizing the messy parts, letting go of that toxic positivity. It has a place for sure, but there are moments where it's like, you know, these open conversations are important because it's not every moment of motherhood is pretty, and that's okay.
I can only hear that you're going to get through this so many times. It'll get better. Okay, when also, can I get a little bit of a break right now? Because 4 years in, it'll get better. But also, like,
it won't.
It sucks. It sucks. It feels like you're being tortured right now. For sure.
And we should be allowed to have those moments of like, hey, this sucks. Doesn't take away from the fact that you love your kid or you love being a mom. But sometimes, yeah, the messy parts, they're there and we should be able to embrace them. And I know other moms are also going through it. So, you know, definitely don't. And if you don't have mom friends like in person, feel free to talk to people online. You could even message us. We are always open to talk and rant about mom life.
Very obsessed with children and what it's like to be a mom. No, but seriously, I think that's true. But I also think, always got to start, everybody's friendship and relationship is different. But I know for me, none of my friends had kids, and you all were extremely supportive once I just opened up and said, like, this is how I feel. And instead of getting the expected things that I thought of, like, oh, like, well, you know, just like being like, I just don't get it. You all were a lot more supportive and asked me questions. And even when as far as like looking things up, I know half of my friends' TikTok feeds were new mother. Like, none of them, except for you, now have kids. So it's like, there is a lot more support than I think at least than I expected. And I think the life is a duality of emotions. I mean, we literally just explained that in Matrescence, like when you're nursing, you feel this love for this child and you're so like enthralled with them, but then you feel negative emotions and like are more susceptible to being angry. Like, it's literally just in our blood, in our DNA, to have dual emotions and to be happy. You can be sad. You can be grateful for your friends. But then also be like really upset that you don't get to do the things that you do with them anymore because now you have a baby.
There's duality in feelings, and we as humans aren't one-sided. Like, we have so many different pieces to us, and so you can experience multiple things at the same time. And I think before we wrap up, that you do make an excellent point is, at least for me, I'm a pretty private person. I have a hard time opening up and asking for help, but it's like, I've never, at least me personally, I've never had a friend that's come up to me or someone that's like, I need help. And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to help you. Like, it's just natural for us to want to help our friends and stuff. So it's like, don't, like, even though it can be scary, it's like what Hav said, you might be surprised the help that you will get or the support you will get just by opening up a little bit. Because a lot of our friends and family want to be there for us. They just don't know how, because they don't realize that we're struggling with something.
Yeah. And if you do find that you are lacking that village or that support and we're completely off base, I do know also for me, I didn't post in the pages because private person, it was just really hard for me to be like, oh, here's to strangers. But I did join a lot of Facebook pages for moms, and it was really nice actually seeing other moms post and be like, this is what's going on. And then I was like, oh, like, this really is going on with other people. It's not just me, which is helpful knowing that you're not in it alone, even if it's not somebody you know.
100%. I think that's an excellent point, because I'm not someone that would post publicly either on like a Facebook page. But I do like reading comments and feeling supported from afar.
Right.
Sometimes you're reading it and you're like, oh, I do feel, you just don't feel alone, because you're like, oh, there are other people experiencing this with me.
Yeah. And then people commenting being like, oh, that was totally me. This is when it got better. Or like, these are things that you can look forward to. Or like, even I know for like sleep and stuff, there was moms who were like, I hate to say it, but like, that was my kid until they were 5. But once they hit 5, like it was like a whole new world. So there's a lot to be said about just camaraderie. And as much as we don't like posting things and we're private, here we are doing a podcast. So,
well, it's one of those things that it's hard, but see, we decided it was time to put ourselves out there so that other moms also don't feel alone, because it really can feel like a very lonely journey. And yeah, camaraderie helps a ton, because I know even like, especially when I was in the thick of it and I was so tired and Hav was like, I get it. And it was like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one that's crying in the middle of the night, feeling alone in the darkness with my baby.
Well, and you can tell me if it helped or not, but I think it helped instead of me being like, it's okay, you'll get through it. I was like, no, dude, this fucking sucks. Like you're being tortured right now. I love you.
It did, yeah, because I didn't feel alone. Even if you weren't going through it at that same moment, I was like, okay, Hav did go through something similar. And I think it is a good reminder, all motherhood journeys, again, are different. Maybe you're really lucky and your kid slept through the night from day one. Amazing. Not us, but amazing. And then maybe you're someone whose kid is still not sleeping at 3 or 4. It's a reminder that no matter where you're at, you are where you're at. Like, you don't have to feel behind or like you're the only one, because it's just, we're all so different and it will change. And so I think, just to kind of like wrap it up, when you put it all together, the brain science, the body changes, the emotional and identity shifts, like Matrescence is huge. It's a new lens for motherhood. And I do think naming it gives us power. It allows us to remind ourselves we're not broken, we're transforming. It's messy, but it's natural and it's a necessary stage of life. So I think it's a good time to shift from kind of I should have this figured out to this is where I'm at. This is a natural part of this motherhood journey, and finding compassion for yourself in the process. Like, embrace where you're at. Motherhood can be lonely, but we hope that this topic helps you feel less lonely. But if this is something that you are currently feeling, we both get it. We're honestly still in the thick of it. Like Hav said, she's 4 years out. Doesn't mean she doesn't still have these moments and is still experiencing. So this is kind of your reminder that you don't have to clean up your story before you tell it. You are allowed to have all the messy middle. You are allowed to feel angry or sad or confused, whatever it is. And that's kind of what makes this life and the motherhood journey beautiful. At least for me, I think it's nice. It's a reminder, like, we don't need to fix everything and we can feel validated in kind of how we feel.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The only thing that I'll add is my motto, my slogan. It's my first time doing this. I just became a mom, and I'm going to use that until my child, probably forever.
Even if we had 5 kids.
It's still my first time. It's my first time. I might know a little bit more about like potty training now, but every new stage, especially with Azzy, every new stage that she goes through, it's my first time. The second baby, that might, but it's my first time.
But I was going to say, it's still your first time because that kid's probably going to be different. So it's like, it doesn't matter. We could have 5 kids. We could have 100 kids. Most likely it's going to be the first time you're going through it with that one.
Just doing my best.
100%. Yeah. And so with that, stay tuned with us. The next episode, we are going to be covering why savoring every moment makes me want to scream. This is something we touched on briefly a few episodes ago because I said it and I hated hearing it, and yet I still said it because obviously
it's true, but also
it's so annoying to hear.
Makes me mad.
Yeah. So we will be diving into all of that next week. Stay tuned. Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for sharing your time with us today. We're so glad you're part of this messy, beautiful village.
If this episode made you laugh, cry, or feel just a little more human, pass it on to a mom friend who needs it too. And hey, if you haven't already, hit subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more moms find the show and gives us a tiny dopamine hit. Let's be real.
Until next week, keep the kids alive and your coffee hot, or at least reheated once.